Hi guys, Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, ex-immigration officer, and former high school teacher, coming to you today live on the Express Entry Law Facebook group and recorded on my awesome Canadian Immigration Institute YouTube channel. I have another tip of the day coming to you, and today's topic, wow, did you hear that? I've been battling a cold, and part of the reason I haven't done tips of the day, at least to this point, is because I've been sick as a dog. And I don't know where that phrase came from. Maybe dogs get really, really sick, but whatever that phrase is we use in Canada, I have been sick as a dog. And one of the things that's compromised has been my voice. So I held off doing this because I was in pretty rough shape the last couple days. But I just realized I've got to do this. And I've had a busy, long day at work today, a ton of consults, a bunch of new people. It was really cool. I had a consult with one awesome couple up in Slave Lake, and they're going to engage me to help them with an Alberta Immigrant Nominee Program application. They came into Canada under the Francophone program, and you guys know who you are because you're members of the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. But we talked about it, and I realized that they had a whole bunch of other people that were working for their same employer that were also looking at permanent residence. And I said, hey, you know what? My fee for an individual is $5,000 Canadian. That's my legal fees. And it's not cheap. But they were totally willing to pay it because they've followed me and know that when we file their application, it's going to be done right. But this isn't about plugging me. But they said, hey, we've got a bunch of other people that might be interested. And I said, all right, well, you get them together. And then maybe there's what we call in legal terms, economies of scale. So maybe if there's more people, then I can reduce my fee accordingly. And so so that was really awesome. But I had a wonderful day today. I had a number of different consults, but my voice is shot. So bear with me. Because I think you'll like this Express Entry tip of the day. And some of you out there who have very little experience with Express Entry are going to want to listen to this one. Because the one that we're covering today is, how do I assess my eligibility for Express Entry? And I get this question all the time. People are constantly asking me, Mark, can you assess me? Am I eligible? Am I eligible? Well, eligibility is super important because that is how you get into the Express Entry pool. Now, eligibility doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether or not you're going to get an ITA, but to get your profile into the pool, you need to be able to know that you are eligible and meet the minimum eligibility criteria or entry criteria for one of the federal immigration programs. So Anshel says, hi, Mark, that's awesome. And Hamid says, hi, Mark, say me hi. Hi, Hamid. Everybody loves to get called out here. These are live, folks. So those that are watching on YouTube, this isn't some scripted thing that Mark has done over 3 or 4 or 5 times trying to get it right. This is honest, just me sharing the knowledge that I have freely. And I would like to see anyone out there who is doing as much as I am, giving away everything that I know. And why do I do it? Well, it's definitely not to line my pockets with money-grubbing lawyer money. The reality is I do it to help you guys. And over the years, I've seen so many people exploited by those who are just looking to take their money. Well, you want to know whether you're eligible before you start giving money to anyone. And especially if you're paying them to do an assessment for you. Now, I do assessments all the time, but my assessments aren't really for the purposes of determining your eligibility, but more whether or not you've got a good chance of getting an invitation to apply. Because why waste all the money of getting your educational credentials assessed, doing a whole bunch of other things, unless you know you have a good chance of qualifying. So, Hamid says, will it possibly come down? Oh, guys, I know. Can you believe the total today? You guys know where to find it, right? Well, I'll maybe cover this a little bit after I get through this tip of the day because I don't want it to get too long. And people are just tuning in and I'm trying to keep these bite-sized small pieces. So how do you assess your eligibility? Well, right off the bat, you can do this yourself. And in fact, the Canadian government has a little wizard or a little tool to help you to do that. So let's flip to my screen and I'm going to blow it up nice and big and I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And hopefully it doesn't interfere with my image in the bottom left. But here's where you're starting, guys. You're going to go right to lovely Google here. I guess this says Google. 30th anniversary of Pi Day. Oh, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten much today. All I've had is this. This is basically my medicine to help my shoulder. That is a separate injury, but guys, I'll leave that another day. One day we'll just have a special live Facebook event complaining about all of our injuries that we get as we get older and how they don't heal. But I'll leave that for a separate day. Okay, so what do you put in here to find this magical wizard? Because it's not easy to find. You're going to type in here, CIC, Come to Canada tool. And it took it right up into the top browser. So hopefully you guys can see that. But it says in those little tiny spaces here, right here, if you can see that any better, CIC Come to Canada tool. And then I'm going to hit enter. And you can see it's right here too, Come to Canada tool. And then I add in CIC so that it just helps the search engine find it easier. So I'm going to click on it, and here it is. Do you want to come to Canada as a skilled immigrant? Heck yeah, I do. All right, well, let's find out if we're eligible. And essentially what this tool does is it assesses your human capital. In other words, what's human capital? Well, it's your age. It's your language ability. It's your education and work experience. All of those things are human capital. So then it says, based on your answers, we'll determine whether or not you're eligible for one of the Canadian permanent resident programs. And remember, Express Entry isn't a program. Express Entry is just the mechanism that the government uses to rank people against each other and choose who they want to give an opportunity to apply for permanent residence. But step one, you have to meet the minimum entry requirements for one of the federal economic programs. And the first one is usually the most common, the Federal Skilled Worker Program. And most of you who have no connection with Canada, that's how you're going to be applying. So you have to meet the minimum entry criteria. And I'm not going to go into all of that detail. That is basically the topics for other tips of the day. But for today, we're just going to dive right into it. So this is as if you know nothing about immigration at all, and you really don't have to. You just enter your answers in here. So let's check our eligibility. So I'm going to play around with this a little bit. I'm going to use my information as much as possible. So I'm going to say I want to go to Alberta. You choose your province, which one you want to live in. At this stage, guys, it makes no difference. So I would normally, if I was submitting my own Express Entry application, there's an option at the bottom for all. You can choose any province, but for the purposes of this assessment, it really doesn't make a difference. Except you're probably not going to put Quebec. So that's the one that you're not going to put on here because Express Entry doesn't work for Quebec. So that's the one you're not going to put in there. So Alberta, and then I'm going to click Next. And hopefully you guys can see this okay. I know it's a little bit small. If I blow it up too big, then what happens is it starts to encroach on my image here, my screen in the bottom, at least the one you're seeing of me jabbering on here. Okay, right off the bat, you have to have a language score in order to do this. So if you do not have either the results from an IELTS exam, International English Language Testing Services, or system, whatever it is, that IELTS, or a CELPIP, or the French one, which is the TEF. If you don't have one of these, then you can't even do this. So I'm going to select IELTS. And remember, these are only valid for 2 years. So my test results have to be within the past 2 years. So I'm just going to put as if I wrote it January the 1st of this year, or that's when my test date was, my results. Okay, then I'm going to scroll up here. Now I'm going to enter my score. Now I'll tell you guys, if you're doing the IELTS, in order to really maximize your points, at least to even have a hope of qualifying, if you have no connection with Canada, you need to have at least an IELTS 7 in speaking, an IELTS 8 in listening, and then a 7 in reading and 7 in writing. So I would normally put those in. So that's the minimum requirements to really have a chance. Now, the actual minimum requirements is less. And essentially what this converts to, these numbers, is the Canadian language benchmark 9. But if you're applying outside Canada, all you really need to meet the minimum entry requirements is to have a CLB, a Canadian language benchmark of 7. Now, that's not IELTS. That's not the IELTS score, but a Canadian language benchmark. This 7877 relates to a Canadian language benchmark of 9, which is what you need to qualify. But for me, guys, I'm going to be real here, and I'm just going to put maxing everything out here. Okay? So you can see I'm just putting everything high. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm actually in the process of working out someone to help me record my own experience in video form, preparing for and writing the IELTS exam. Now, I'm pretty sure the IELTS organizers up in Calgary, where I'm going to write it, are probably not going to let me bring a camera in to record my experience, but I'll definitely do it going in and coming out, and my thought process on what the experience was like. So I've got my numbers in here. I click next. Then it asks if I have a test results for anything else. Maybe I can make this a little bit larger. In my case, a second language, no. I do have a little tiny bit of French. I did it in high school, but that was over 25 years ago. So I'm putting none. If you do, you can put your French in there. Okay. Now it's asking about, do you have any work experience in Canada? And for me, anyone who goes in here and answers 1 year or more with your language scores, you're not even going to get any more questions. It's just going to accept you in because you will have met the 1 year of skilled work experience. It asks which NOC because it has to be at a skilled level. So if I was here and I put skill level B, which is the lowest, that's still considered to be skilled, which is technical occupations and trades, I can get through for sure. If I click next, it'll say, congratulations, you qualify. But I'm not going to do that because most of you guys are outside of Canada and don't have any Canadian experience. And so I put none here, none, and then here, if you don't have any Canadian, you put none of the above. And then I click next. And now it gets into the heart of the remaining two programs. So the Canadian experience class is now disqualified, so you're not eligible for that. But now it's asking, how many years in the last 10 years of skilled work experience do you have? And I'm not going to go into detail about what constitutes skilled work experience, but I will do that in a future tip of the day. This, though, skilled work experience, I'll just give you a quick overview. It's at least a CLB, or I should say a skill level B. So it's skilled work, or A or 0 on the National Occupational Classification System, which we're now using 2016. So the NOC 2016, you have to be working at a skill level B or higher. And that skilled work experience has to be at least continuous. And you can see here, it has to have been paid full time, which in the case of immigration is 30 hours per week. And it can only be in one occupation because that's how the programs work. For the Canadian Experience class, it can be in different occupations, but for the federal program, it has to be continuous. Why? I don't know, guys. That's just how they set it up. So how many? Well, for me, I'm going to put 6 or more years because I have that. But you would put down what, however many years you have. Then the next question it asks if you've worked in a skilled trade. And that's what these NOC descriptions are. So you can see all these industrial, equipment, trades, chefs, cooks, butchers. Do you have experience in one of these trades? And if you put yes, then that's basically going to mean that you are eligible potentially for the federal skilled trade program. And it will ask questions about that. But if you answer no, which is what I'm going to do, I'm not going to be eligible for the federal skilled trade program. And so that one will be off the table. And going forward, now all it's asking about is eligibility for the purposes of the federal skilled worker program, which is the last of the 3 and the one that most of you are trying to determine whether you qualify for. Next, it asks money. Well, you need to have a minimum proof of funds. If you don't have a job offer in Canada, then you need to have a certain amount of funds. And the funds here are actually based on, these haven't been updated. So the numbers are not perfectly situated, but if you guess roughly, this will help. So if you're a single person, this is roughly kind of the minimum you need to have. If there's 2 people in your family, it's this amount, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if there's more, then that's usually here. So I'm just going to put, it doesn't matter. I'm going to treat myself as single for the purposes of this exercise. It says how many family members. I'm just going to put 1 down. and then I'm going to click next. Understand, if your money that you put down in that last section is lower than the minimum required to establish yourself in Canada, you'll be found ineligible. And that's one of the main reasons why people often are found to be ineligible. Also, if your work isn't continuous in one occupation. So if you have different occupations, or your work experience doesn't meet the requirements of what's considered to be foreign work experience, skilled, in other words, at a skill level B, A, or 0, then that could also disqualify you. So those are the main ones. Next it asks, do I have a valid job offer in Canada? Well, job offer is a company in Canada that has obtained a labor market impact assessment for you. You've already said you don't have any Canadian work experience. You're not working in Canada. So the only job offer you could potentially have is if a company has gone out and obtained what we call a permanent LMIA to support your job offer in Canada. And the only way they're getting that is by showing there's no Canadian or permanent resident who can do the job. So do you have a valid job offer? I'm going to put no, because most of you won't. And then I'm going to click next. And we're not quite done there, because now they have to assess my age. Now this is where I don't want to get disqualified. So I'm going to put a different age down, but I'm 45 and I get 0 points for that. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to put that I'm just a little bit younger. I'm going to say I'm born in 1980, which will give me some points, but not, I'll say I was born in 1983. That works. And then I'm just going to say January the 1st. Okay. And then it asks about your level of education. So the only education that you can count is education if you've obtained it in Canada. And I'm going to say no, because most of you haven't. Or you've obtained what we have here, an educational credential assessment. And that's a formal assessment, which I'm not going to talk about in this tip. I'll talk about later ones, performed by a educational credential assessment agency. And for most people, it's WES, but there are other ones that you can go through as well. Okay. And it has to have been done within the last 5 years, which of course everybody it will, because Express Entry was only created on January the 1st of 2015. So there won't be anyone who has an ECA that's older than that, generally speaking. All right. Then it says here, if you did get your assessment done or you had Canadian education, what was the level? So I'm just going to put here for me a master's or a professional degree because I'm a lawyer. And then I'll put next. And guess what happens here? The last stages, and some of you will recognize these questions. Have you studied in Canada for 2 years or more? I'm not going to put yes here. Do you have at least 2 years of full-time work experience in Canada? I'm not putting that down either because I don't have that. Do you have a relative in Canada? You know what? Just for fun, I'm going to say yes here. So do you have a relative in Canada? Yeah, I do have a few. You may not. And in that case, you would check none of the above. But I'm going to put yes just because some of you may have a sibling in Canada. And now it asks my marital status. And in this case, I already put one person was coming. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to indicate that I have never been married or I'm single. And then I'm going to click next. And voila. It should say, congratulations. You are on your way to Canada. But instead, it's kind of boring. It gives you this code, which you can keep track of if you like. And then you put that code in after you complete your MyCIC portal registration. You can enter that code in, and then it'll allow you to go in and enter your information into the portal. Or you can do the assessment right when you've created your MyCIC account, and then you can actually go through the same assessment from within that portal process. But at this stage, we're doing it in advance. And you can see here, all it says to me is based on your answers, you appear to be eligible for Express Entry. So they don't want to give you too much hope. It says you appear to be eligible because you still have to answer all the more detailed questions when you start to do your profile. All right. So that is it, folks. I hope that you like that tip. And as is always the case with our lovely tip of the day, I hope that it was useful for you guys. I know that a lot of people have been posting little questions here. I want to show you a couple other things that are really, really important to me. And many of you know that I just try to answer questions. I do all that I can to, to help you guys. I'm not here putting pressure on you to hire me. That's not the object. The object here is to give helpful information and to serve you. But many people, because they either are not in a position to afford my legal fees, or they decide that they're going to try to do it themselves, but just want a little bit of extra help. I went to the trouble of creating this that I'm actually really proud of. And it's the Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself. And someone out there is probably saying, well, how do I access this guide? Well, I'll put up a little link here for you guys as well. And it'll probably be okay for you guys to see it. But if you just type in www.canadianimmigrationinstitute.com, it will actually take you right here where you can access the course. And it is awesome. I say that, and I guess I should say that because I'm the one who created it. But I poured all my knowledge, all my information, everything that I know into this course. And I created it for all of you guys. And so if you're looking for a little bit of help and guidance, you can subscribe on a monthly basis. You can stay in as long or as short a period of time as you like, or you can purchase a full, complete lifetime access to it. So some of you who may be consultants or lawyers or people just getting into immigration as representatives, obviously that's going to be a good deal for you because you'll be able to leverage off of that, increase your skill, and then use my strategies and tips to represent other people. Or some of you are not sure how long you're going to be in the process and you feel, you know what, I'm just going to purchase the lifetime access because it just makes sense for me. That's totally cool. And remember, guys, always, there is a complete and total money back guarantee. You have 30 days to decide whether or not it's actually going to work for you. And if it doesn't, and you feel it's not helpful, you can cancel your subscription at any time, and I give you a full money back guarantee. All right, so I'm going to just get rid of that one. And I'm going to get rid of this one right here. And I am going to now open it up just for a couple quick questions. So at this stage, if you don't want to watch anymore, you've got the meat of the benefit of this little tip of the day. But it's been a while since I've answered some questions. And usually they're in the form of an EE Live Q&A. But at this stage, I'm going to answer just a few questions here. So we'll start here with Hamid. And Hamid asks the question, let's see if I can get it right up here where I can see it. Hamid says, should the funds be in the account for some time, or can we deposit before we travel? That's a good question, Hamid. So when it comes to proof of funds, the money needs to be in your account at the time in which you submit your electronic application for permanent residence. But I'll be honest with you. Yes, you can put it in right before you submit after you get your invitation to apply and before you file, you can put it in. But I always advise my clients to have the money in there for at least 6 months because the government asks you to produce a letter from your bank that states the average balance for 6 months. And if you can show that you've had those funds in your account for 6 months, then the likelihood is that it's actually yours and not just show money that you've borrowed from someone else that isn't really available for you to get settled in Canada. All right, great question. Okay, Alahan says, Mark, if we've done our bachelor's in our country plus postgrad in Canada, is it considered as 2 or more certificates? Absolutely, Alahan. You can totally include it. So it would without a doubt be considered 2 or more, and that's where you're really going to get some good bonus points. Not only are you getting extra comprehensive ranking system points for your Canadian education, but for having 2 or more degrees or 2 or more educational credentials, one of which at least 3 years, which is usually your foreign credential, you can come in and take one program of 1 year and really boost your score. So great question. All right, James says, is it possible to get a job in Canada when you're offshore? James, that's a great question. Canada's economy, I remember when I started my practice back in 2003, the economy was heating up and it was booming, and especially in Alberta. In fact, there was so many jobs available in Alberta that some of the fast food franchises actually had to close down early, like at 6 o'clock, because I didn't have staff to run the stores. And in those days, anybody could get a work permit to come to Canada. But that's all changed now. And it's far more difficult for companies to hire foreign nationals. And there's a lot more Canadians out of work. But the economy is getting better and it's getting stronger. And do we do labor market impact assessments for employers? And remember, those are the things that employers need to have to offer you a job. Just a straight letter doesn't work. So don't be duped. And I'd encourage you to go back to the Canadian Immigration Institute YouTube channel if you're not watching it there already, and go and find my tip of the day for how to determine whether or not a job offer is real or whether it's fake. And that will help you, because many of you guys get duped or tricked or scammed by these awful people. Dee Dee says, you need to get some rest. I do, Dee Dee. I need to go home. Guys, I've been like operating on maybe 3 hours sleep most nights. So I just haven't been able to sleep. I was playing basketball with my brother about 2.5 weeks ago, right before I went down to San Diego that same week for the Social Media Marketing World Conference, those who follow me. And we were going, one of his players was going to pass him the ball. He was on the other side, and I knew what was happening. And so I jumped in there to steal the ball from him. And we both tried to enter the same space at the same time. And boom, he hit me right on my shoulder here. And oh my goodness, I just went to get an x-ray this morning, but it has hurt and bothered me. And that's why I have these lovely anti-inflammatories to help me get through the day. But anyway, so I haven't been able to sleep because I can't sleep on this shoulder and I can't sleep on this shoulder because both hurt. But anyways, okay, enough sad story. Life goes on. I will be okay. All right, so let's answer just a couple more questions here. Okay, Neha says, what about Canadian experience between 1 to 2 years? Will it give more points than 1 year? That's a great question. And yes, it will. And although it's kind of combined, understand the only reason they combine it in the eligibility tool is because for the purposes of determining eligibility for the programs, they just treat 1 and 2 years just the same. So it doesn't matter. But for the purposes of the comprehensive ranking system, it does make a difference because you're given more points for your Canadian you're given comprehensive ranking system points for each year that you score. And I'm just going to pull it up right now here. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm just going to pull it up. And actually, I'll share my screen with you guys again because I love doing that. So you can see right here, and I probably don't even need to enlarge this. It's pretty big as it is. But you can see if you go down to the Canadian work experience, you'll see how many awesome points you get. So here's age, and this is why you can see, guys, I'm wasting too much time now, but once you're 29 here, I'm going to move this over. I've got so many pop-up windows on my screen that you guys can't see. But when you're here at 20, right here, 20 to 29, that's when you max. But once you turn 30, then you start to lose points. At 31, you start to lose points. Okay? So, but if you scroll down here and we go to Canadian work experience, right here, you can see that for 1 year, you get a whopping 40 points if you're single. 2 years, you get 13 more points, 53 points. So you can see how powerful Canadian work experience is. It basically almost guarantees you the ability to qualify. All right, so let's go back here. All right, so that's the answer there. Okay, I'm going to answer one more question, then I'm going to wrap it up, guys. So if I don't get to your question here, I'll try to type something in the comment section, but my voice is basically done. All right, so next question is from Mohammed, and Mohammed says, I work 1 year in 3 different companies and all are NOC B job. Can I claim those as 1 year job experience to get points? Okay, Mohammed, the only way that you can do that is if it's all in the same NOC. In other words, you can work for different companies, but it has to be continuous, so no breaks between those jobs, and it has to all be in the exact same NOC code. So we're not talking about skill level B, we're talking about the same exact NOC code. And why not? Let's go in here, and I'm going to, just for the sake of Mohammed and to finish on a strong note, those of you who are just tuning in, when I do my Express Entry Live Q&As, I do not mess around, and I take you right to the source. So let's take a look at this, Mohammed, so you can see. So remember, this is the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which is what you're talking about. And I'm sorry, I've been away from my mic a little bit, so you probably guys can't hear me very well. I apologize. Okay, so if you look here, skilled work experience, this is what it is. And we've talked already about the fact it has to be 10 years. It has to be paid. It can't be volunteer or unpaid. It has to be in a skilled occupation. It has to be at least 1 year or 1,560 hours minimum, 30 hours per week continuous. So you can't work 2,000 hours and accomplish that in 10 months and qualify. It has to be 1 year. It has to be full-time at one job, or, and this is your situation, Mohammed, okay? It can be equal amounts in part-time. So if you're working, concurrently with 2 jobs at the same time, you can meet that, or full-time at more than 1 job. So in the same case, this is where it fits. So collectively between those jobs, you can work at more than 1 job, but they basically have to be for 12 months at more than 1 job, but they still have to meet the same requirements, 30 hours per week. But remember, it has to be in your primary NOC. It has to be the same NOC to meet the minimum eligibility criteria. Once you meet it, then you're good. Then you can add other work experience if you want to get more points. All right, guys, that I think wraps it up. And I think I've actually covered most of the things that I wanted to. I don't think there's anything else other than just once again promoting the fact that this right here, guys, is everything to me. It's the thing that allows me to keep doing this. So if you guys go there, and remember, here is the link for it. That is where you're going to get the source of all goodness. And those who subscribe to this contribute significantly to me being able to continue doing this. So if it was helpful, then do it, guys, right here. Click on that link. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks for everybody who tuned in live. I didn't even announce this. It was just spontaneous. So have a wonderful day. And wow, it became 30 minutes long. What a long tip of the day. Hopefully people who are just tuning in for a quick snapshot will realize that you only need to watch the first, 10 minutes or so. All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, signing off and wishing you guys all the best as you navigate this crazy world that we call express entry.